Emily Harper stared out the window of her small apartment, watching the soft drizzle blur the city lights. The streets glistened with reflections, each one like a tiny story she would never be a part of. It had been a quiet year. And not by choice, life had simply become a rhythm of work home. And the occasional phone call that never lasted long enough to feel meaningful. She sipped her lukewarm tea and let out a sigh. A mixture of exhaustion and longing. Deep down, she wanted something more. Not just excitement, but connection. A conversation that lingered, a smile that meant more than polite courtesy, a presence that felt like home. It wasn't that she had given up on hope. She had just learned to keep it quiet. Tucked away beneath layers of routine and practicality. Her friends often called her a dreamer. But Emily didn't think she was dreaming, she was waiting. Waiting for a moment, a chance, a spark that would remind her life still held surprises. Sometimes late at night. She imagined what it would feel like to meet someone who truly understood her, someone who noticed the little things. The way her hands trembled when she laughed too hard, or how she pressed her forehead against the glass when the rain felt like a friend. That Thursday evening began like any other, with the soft hum of the city in the background and the faint aroma of coffee drifting in from the cafe below. But there was something unusual in the air, a gentle tension, almost imperceptible, as if the universe had shifted slightly and noticed her waiting. Emily felt a flutter of curiosity, quiet whisper that maybe tonight wouldn't end in the usual emptiness. She stepped outside for a walk, letting the rain kiss her cheeks. The streets were nearly empty, and the glow from the street lamps created long, soft shadows that danced at her feet. That's when she saw him, a figure standing by the corner bookstore, silhouetted against the warm light of the display window. For a brief moment, their eyes met. There was no conversation, no introduction. But something unspoken passed between them. A flicker of recognition that made her heart skip. Emily didn't know who he was. And yet, in that moment, she felt the stirrings of hope. A quiet voice inside her whispered, "This night could change everything." And just like that, the ordinary Thursday began to feel like the beginning of something extraordinary. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the brief encounter by the bookstore. The memory of that quiet glance lingered in her mind, like a melody she couldn't quite place but wanted to hear again. She remembered how her mornings used to feel lighter, back when she had dared to imagine someone seeing her fully, her hopes, her fears, the small quirks she usually hid. It reminded her of Daniel Foster, though she hadn't known it yet. They had met before, in passing, during small moments that seemed insignificant at the time. At the park where she often walked her dog, he had offered a polite smile. At the cafe near her office, he had nodded politely while she juggled a coffee and her laptop. Small exchanges, fleeting gestures. Yet they had left a quiet imprint on her heart, a sense of familiarity she didn't understand at first. Now, thinking back, Emily realized these were moments of unspoken connection. Moments where they were close without realizing it. Sometimes she caught herself glancing at the empty seat across from hers at lunch or the park bench beside her. She would imagine him there, talking quietly about books or the rain, or laughing at something only she could understand. There was a strange comfort in that invisible bond. Even though they had never really spoken more than a few words, what kept them apart was as simple as life itself: schedules, routines, and the cautious walls Emily had built around her heart. She had convinced herself that fleeting encounters were enough, that she didn't need more. Yet, deep inside, she longed for the connection she saw in others, the subtle, unspoken understanding that made life feel full. Daniel, she sensed, had felt the same. There was a tenderness in his smile, a softness in his eyes that suggested he, too, had imagined what could be if only the circumstances allowed. Both had drifted close without meeting fully. Two people circling each other in quiet longing. And now, with that brief meeting in the rain, it was as if all those unspoken moments, the small glances, the tiny gestures, the private imaginings were gathering together, waiting to be recognized. Emily felt a gentle thrill, a combination of nostalgia and hope. Maybe the past hadn't been wasted after all. Maybe all those near misses were preparing them for something more. She couldn't know what would happen next, but she felt it in her chest, a quiet certainty that life was about to open a door she had been longing to walk through for years. The rain had stopped, leaving the city's streets glistening under the soft glow of streetlights. Emily walked slowly, her coat wrapped tightly around her. When she noticed the familiar figure leaning against the corner of the bookstore, her heart skipped, not in fear or surprise, but in recognition. As if the world had paused to allow this exact moment, Daniel looked up and met her eyes. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, just the quiet understanding that comes when two people have lingered in each other's thoughts for too long. A small smile spread across his face, one that made Emily's chest ache with a mix of nostalgia and hope. They fell into step together without a word, walking through the rain-washed streets as if they had been doing it all their lives. Conversation came naturally, filled with laughter over small details and pauses that felt comfortable rather than forced. Emily remembered all the little moments from the past, the near misses, the fleeting glances, and realized that this encounter wasn't just chance. It was as if life had been quietly nudging them together all along. At a quiet park bench, Daniel stopped. He looked at her with a gentleness that made her catch her breath. "I've thought about you," he admitted softly, "more than I probably should have. But I also think maybe all those small moments weren't accidents. Maybe they were leading us here." Emily's eyes shimmered. She felt the weight of months, even years, of quiet longing lift and settle into something lighter, something real. She realized that life didn't always need grand gestures or dramatic twists to be meaningful. Sometimes it was the small, consistent threads of connection, the subtle smiles, the shared silences, the unspoken understanding that carried the deepest emotion. They sat together on the bench, talking until the streetlights flickered and the night grew still. Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. One night, a single glance had transformed her world, not through chaos or heartbreak, but through gentle connection and timing. As they stood to leave, Emily knew that this was only the beginning. Life had given them a second chance, a quiet miracle built on hope, patience, and the courage to take a small step forward. She squeezed Daniel's hand lightly and smiled, knowing that sometimes the simplest moments can change everything, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt fully alive, fully seen, and ready to embrace whatever came next together.